From the studios of Farm Journal Broadcast, this is Ag Day.
Putting high tech to use.
I hate not recording data when we're going across the field.
Meet a maverick in the field who's always racing for answers, as talk of a recession sends Wall Street investors running for the exits, while others disagree.
The overall indicators are not consistent with recession.
Commodity markets faced increased uncertainty.
I guess I'm not sure how sustainable that is if we have problems with the economy here and go into a recessionary period. It's going to be hard to sell the beef.
The latest on the market moves and where we go from here, right now on Ag Day.
Ag Day is brought to you by Pioneer. More farmers choose Pioneer brand corn because it delivers game-changing yields. Join a winning team. Pioneer brand corn. Your best year starts here.
Good morning, I'm Clinton Griffiths. Commodity and stock markets recoiling to end last week on fears of a possible recession. Investors reacting to the employment report, which showed U.S. job growth tumbled last month, falling well short of what the market expected, spiking the unemployment rate to its highest level since October of 2021. Now we begin with the latest from Laura Aguirre.
The economy is moving closer to the point at which it will be appropriate to reduce our policy rate.
That was Fed Chair Jerome Powell on Wednesday, before the disappointing July jobs report dropped. The U.S. economy added 114,000 jobs last month, a big dip from June's 179,000 and far short of the Dow Jones estimate. But over at the Labor Department, one bad month, not a red flag.
We look at not just 1 month's data, but we look at trends, and the 3-month trend in job creations is still 170,000.
Both Secretary Sue and Chairman Powell point to a broader set of indicators that improve the Fed's economic calculus on possible rate cuts.
The GDP remains high, consumer spending remains really strong, layoffs remain relatively low, and the labor force participation rate remains strong too. It reached the highest in over 2 decades.
Then there's hourly wages. They did rise 0.2% in July, just a hair under analyst expectations.
The growth remains above inflation.
Still, the jobs numbers made Wall Street traders antsy. The Dow at one point plunging more than 900 points in a sell-off. The word recession buzzed in headlines.
The overall indicators are not consistent with recession. We are still looking at over 15 million jobs created in this economy, defying all expectations.
There is a silver lining with July's 4.3% unemployment rate, a mark not seen since October of 2021. The higher that rate, the more likely the Fed not only makes a rate cut in September, but makes a more aggressive one. I'm Laura Aguirre reporting for Ag Day.
As we said, the sell-off on Friday wasn't limited to the stock market, with some commodities, especially feeder cattle, moving deeper into the red. Ag Day's Michelle Rook is monitoring the markets as they open again this morning. And Michelle, grains were higher though on Friday.
Yeah, that's right. The plunge in the stock market did cause some short profit taking and short covering in the grains as fund traders needed to cash in some of those profitable positions to pay margin calls. Conversely, it caused some risk off selling of long positions in livestock futures. The key going forward, though, will be if money continues to come out of the financial markets, what will it mean longer term for ag markets? The meltdown in the stock market does have implications for commodities. It started last week after Fed Chair Jerome Powell opened the door to interest rate cuts in September, and recession talk was further fueled on Friday by the dismal jobs report. That spilled over into the ag markets and was bearish for the protein sector, in particular live and feeder cattle futures.
I guess I personally think this plummet in the equity market and the perception that maybe the economy is not going to be that great, it's going to really make it hard to sell high-priced beef. We've been fortunate that employment's been good enough, unemployment's been low enough that people have been willing to pay up for the high-priced beef. I guess I'm not sure how sustainable that is if we have problems with the economy here and go into a recessionary period. It's going to be hard to sell the beef.
He says that may eventually shift some protein demand over to lower priced pork. As far as the grain markets, they saw some buying and reaction, but longer term, will it push more fund traders to cover their near to record short position in the grains?
I don't know that I'd go so far as to say they're going to blow out of their shorts, but I think it wouldn't be a surprise to see them lighten up a little bit. So there's a lot of dynamics here and a lot going on that's moving money in and out of equities and the commodity markets.
Yet the economic data is likely to increase the odds of a 50 basis point cut in interest rates at the September FOMC meeting to stimulate the economy. I'm Michelle Rook reporting for Ag Day.
Will the West finally be able to get a break from the heat this week? Let's get an update from meteorologist Jack Van Meter.
And good news is, in our extended temperature outlook, it does look like that much of the country actually will be cooling down, or at least at average temperatures. Yes, it is summer, and yes, it's supposed to be hot, but this is almost that extreme hot. And when it lasts for a while, we do have those drought conditions really set in. More of that in my full weather. But take a look at this. Much of the northern Great Plains actually going to be up below average. So might be seeing some 70s in there, which would be great news there for both the Dakotas and into Minnesota as well. And then just this gray coloration is going to be that average temperatures for this time of year, which is great news there. Now let's get an update here on the wheat harvest up in Milk River, Alberta. Darren Ostenberg sharing these pictures, saying it's go time. It's made all the better when you have a beautiful sky like that. I'll have more in your forecast coming up.
The record heat in the West could soon drive up the cost of fruits and vegetables. Now, it's reported crop yields in the West have taken a hit due to the scorching temperatures. One farmer who owns organic farms in California and Oregon that grow blueberries and citrus says the heat waves have caused more fruit to shrivel, and that means less to harvest.
As it gets warmer, the fruit becomes more delicate, so we'll stop harvesting earlier, so it impacts the amount that we can harvest in a day.
The possible increase at the grocery store is a reversal of a trend seen over the past year, with the cost of fruits and vegetables dropping by 1%. So where do these markets go from here? We'll ask the question next in Markets Now. And later, we'll meet a maverick in the field utilizing technology to future-proof his farm. There was a bit of a bright side to markets on Friday, with grains rising. Ag Day's Michelle Rook is back with a preview of this week in Markets Now.
Friday's market closes were higher in the grains, lower in the livestock. Dwayne Bussey with Bolt Marketing is back with analysis. So the pop that we saw in the grains on Friday, how much of that was just some short covering and short profit taking?
I think a lot of it was, it was a really rough week last week in the grains. The weather really flipped on us. The week prior to that, we had maybe a hot, dry forecast coming in. I really thought we'd get a nice bump in the market, and instead last week came in and the weather flipped again. And now we're looking at cooler temps, above average rainfall, and we basically took all the weather premium out. So when we got to Friday, it was a new month, sure, but I think it was just a short covering pop is all.
So as we start a new week, Dwayne, it is going to be pretty hard to build on that then.
I'm afraid it is. I think the trade, I think everyone's comfortable with saying yields are trend line to above. There's no disasters out there. Even my area is kind of patched in a little bit better. Crops look better. So I think it's going to be really hard to get a market to rally. I mean, you would need some sort of surprise, China come in and buy a massive amount, but I just don't look for that to happen because they're smart. There's a downward trend here. I think they can just sit back and wait and buy things even cheaper.
Conversely, we had livestock down on Friday, and that was kind of due to this meltdown in the stock market, wasn't it?
Yeah, there too. What a horrible week on the equities. It started with a lot of, the private business companies coming out with some negative reports, the jobs report, unemployment, and all those were negative, and all those kind of snowballed into all of a sudden come Friday. We were talking about being in a recession and 3 interest rate cuts yet this year, and that really hammered the equity markets, which of course made it really easy for the funds to say, well, I don't want to be long cattle if we're going into some sort of a recession or even a pull down in the economy. And remember, we're at record high prices. I mean, not record high price area for cattle, so it's pretty easy to take profits up there.
Do you think the funds will liquidate more, though? I mean, technically, October live cattle did at least close back above the 100-day moving average.
Well, the live cattle are a little bit odd and different because there's at such a discount to the cash market. But when I look at feeders, I think the highs are in, and I think cow-calf guys need to be aggressive hedgers here because they're at the cash market and could go a lot lower, really.
Thanks for your analysis. Dwayne Bussey with Bolt Marketing. We'll have more Ag Day coming up.
Yeah, take a look at this. This is our precipitation outlook for the first part of August, and we can see good news is happening. That ridge that's just been dominating the middle part of the country is going to slowly fall apart, and actually we're going to be seeing some decent chances for rain for the central and the western part of the country, which of course is great news. But actually, on the flip side, where we've actually seen a decent amount of rain, actually we're going to be seeing those drier conditions, especially out in the Great Lakes states there, right around Michigan, Indiana, and Ohio. So we are going to be switching up that pattern, which again is great news there. Take a look at the drought monitor, and we can go to the drier parts of the nation, especially out east by West Virginia and just regular Virginia there. As we can see, that extreme drought is starting to set in place there, but as we just saw in that temperature outlook, or excuse me, that precipitation outlook, we will be upping those chances of rains the next couple days, which is great news there. And unfortunately, as we head out to the northeast as well, it's looking like it's going to be dry out there still, and that's a problem because they are starting to deal with those wildfires as well, which will only start to amp up when they see less and less rain. Speaking of, take a look at our fire weather risk situation. As we can see up in Montana, we do have the risk for some fire weather, and especially out for parts of California and Nevada as well. Just very, very dry temperatures coupled with strong winds. And unfortunately, worst case scenario for fire. So hopefully though, that ridge can start to bring down and we can get just a little bit of moisture coming off of the Pacific Ocean. Take a look at the jet stream. Again, here's that ridge just still up in the middle of the country. But good news is, as I zoom in here and I put this forward, we see that ridge is actually going to start to dampen and almost collapse in on itself just a little bit. It's also going to make way for some precipitation to be moving through the rest of the country, which is great news there. Roswell, Georgia, high of 91, low of 73 degrees. Eureka, California, high of 67 degrees, low of 53 degrees. And Wichita Falls, Kansas, look at that, 103 degrees with a low of 76 degrees.
We've heard ag equipment values are falling. Is it true? Machinery Pete has receipts next. And later, we'll see how a producer in Arkansas is finding new ways to innovate thanks to cutting-edge technology. We call him a maverick in the field. His story next. Machinery Pete has heard the reports that used equipment values are dropping. So he has a look at the numbers to see if that's true.
Well, folks, a lot of talk right now that used farm equipment values are tanking here in 2024. And I just want us to stop a little bit and let's get away from that kind of ambiguous language, tanking, cratering, things like that. Now, there's no question used values are softening. I started to see it with combines in 2023, and just the past few months here, really starting to see it with large late model horsepower tractors. Now, I will say that for 25 years, the key metric that I've tracked daily and studied is what I call our Machinery Pete ratio. Maybe you heard me talk about it. It's pretty simple. It's the average auction price on any item divided by the current average dealer advertised price. And again, 25 years I've been tracking this through the ups and the downs. And what I found is that the average normal range for my Machinery Pete ratio is about 71 to 76%. So in other words, an item sells at auction for roughly 70% to 3/4 of what a dealer would ask for it. Now, let's talk used combine values, late model. Last Saturday, I was at an auction we covered in Paris, Missouri, Wheeler Auctions and Real Estate, the most large late model used farm equipment I've ever seen at an auction. Talked about it here last week on Ag Day. And let's take two examples on combines. Now, they had a pair of John Deere X9 1100s, both 22 models. They sold for $410,000 and $428,000. Now, so far this year, average auction price on an X9 1100, $482,456. Current average dealer ad price is $711,056. So my Machinery Pete ratio on John Deere X9 1100s right now is at 67.9%, which is really interesting because now let's look at Case IH 8250s. There were 6 sold on last Saturday's auction in Paris, Missouri. They went from $263,000 up to $393,000. Current average auction price this year on an 8250, $292,462. Current average dealer ad price, $440,356. So the Machinery Pete ratio, 66.4%. Now, folks, that's interesting because 66, 67%, that's a little bit under my historical average. But 10 years ago, 2014, 2015, that was the biggest drop I've ever seen with used farm equipment values. And back then, late model used combines, my machine repeat ratio was down kind of 62%, even down as low as 58, 59%. That was 10 years ago. So right now, when folks are saying used values are tanking and cratering, they are softening, but they aren't quite as dramatic a drop as we saw 10 years ago. Now, the rest of 2024, will we drop more? That could well be. I'll be there to report it every day, trying to bring you the answers.
All right, thanks, Pete. Speaking of equipment, sometimes keeping tabs on everything running at the farm can be overwhelming. We'll see how an Arkansas producer is utilizing technology to do it next in the country.
Mavericks in the Field on Ag Day is brought to you by John Deere. Connecting your farm is easier than ever, from just the basics to being able to make real-time decisions wherever you are. John Deere has the tech you need.
There's so much new tech that producers can utilize these days, but figuring out what actually works on the farm, that's the real challenge. As Farm Journal's Tyne Morgan reports, one Northeast Arkansas farmer simply thinks about tech differently, and that's why he's a maverick in the field.
I mean, it's not uncommon for us to make 75 bushel beans.
If proof is in the pudding, these soybeans are a sign of how paying attention to every detail can add up.
I hate not recording data when we're going across the field.
That's a lot of data considering Center farms well over 20,000 acres. They farm some on their own, but they also partner with another farmer in the area.
Yeah, I've always been interested in computers, always wanted to, I build computers, I work on, technology equipment. I'm always trying to be, cutting edge.
When he finds something that works, Travis goes all in. That was the case when he was trying to find a way to stay connected to all their machines on the farm.
I finally, worked out a deal. I said, what if we just get everything connected, get auto stereo on everything, put displays and everything, do recording on everything, because that makes life a lot easier. You don't have to worry about what's recording here, what's recording there. Just bring it all in.
Travis may have a love for technology, but he also has a love for racing.
In my I call it my previous life now, I was a race car driver. And not only a race car driver, I was a race car builder.
For 20 years, Center traveled all across the country and even the world, building and driving race cars.
I had extreme amounts of data. I had GPS on my race car in 2005 to record where I go, where I'm at, all this information that I would study and try to be better. And so that exact thing is what amplified my sensors, my data collection for farming.
That may also be why Travis is willing to take risks and try things that are unheard of on the farm. One example is the way he's grasped on to artificial intelligence, or AI.
Taking ChatGPT, for example, you can throw some of your data in there and spit out, what you're expected to make. And if you can throw enough information and give it the right prompts, I feel like we could, change the way we make our decision making.
Last summer, before you could even upload files to ChatGPT, Travis and his son created their own chat model. The goal was to take their 10-year yield history in every field, add in planting and harvest dates, the varieties or hybrids they planted, and combine that with weather data.
So when you start thinking about that, you can really figure out, so if I planted at this particular date with this particular variety, I know my pollination date, I know what temperature I'm going to have this year. Maybe this will help me generate better yield information so I can market better. So it opens up a whole realm of possibilities when you are able to throw in more information to this.
Another wild idea he's using on the farm.
And then you can actually see it laying on the floor like this. So then you can take the weather itself and exactly follow it.
Virtual reality.
It's extremely impressive how your eyes are basically your cursor. And you just look at something in it, you click your fingers together and it works.
He admits today that VR headsets are bulky, but in the future, he thinks the technology will be in a pair of sunglasses.
I'm walking in the field, I see a weed. You can basically, you can do it now. You can take a picture of it, you can enter that in ChatGPT, you can ask what that is and how I can kill it. And it'll tell you.
Travis's biggest fan just may be his dad, who together make one great team.
I'm going to tell you, I wouldn't want to farm without him.
Seems like you guys are a good team.
We are. Yeah, we work good together.
I'm Tyne Morgan for Ag Day.
All right, thanks, Tyne, and that's all the time we have this morning. We're sure glad you tuned in. From all of us here at Ag Day, I'm Clinton Griffiths. Have a great day.